Is the Mountain West done after adding North Dakota State? I mean, I think so. But I don't know.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all very much, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. The Mountain West wasn't desperate. Somebody out there is. And today's schedule breakdown is Michigan. Yikes. Yikes, Michigan. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. They put that same dedicated drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work that defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There is more to a Mazda because there is more to you. Realignment moves have had a snowball history. One team, one school, though in this instance with North Dakota State, it is just a team. So that's actually applicable. Anyway, moving on. One school makes a move. And then other schools look around and go, should we be doing that? Is that what we're doing? Is that the direction that these things are moving? There have been a number of examples on this front. The downfall of the Pac-12, what's happened in the WAC the last several years. Just to name a couple, there are other examples that you can look at. When one school makes a move, people start to get antsy. People start to get into the frame of mind that if someone else did it, there must be a good reason, and someone else might be doing it. There's a little game theory that goes on here. You're trying to guess what other folks are doing and allow that to dictate what you are then going to do. One school left, so do other schools then follow suit. So do we need to be following suit lest we get left behind? So I bring all that up on today's show to say for now, I think the Mountain West is done. I don't think they will be done forever. We've all been waiting on and discussing the big tectonic shift where college football could fully break away from the NCAA. Maybe in my perfect world, you'd set up a promotion and relegation system so that when a school makes a jump, it's as a result of having won a championship at a lower level. And then there's a financial incentive. Then there's a disincentive for schools to finish all the way at the bottom. Keeps things interesting across the board. Lots of benefits to that. I don't think we're anywhere close to that. But that move feels like it's going to happen at some point, and North Dakota State wants to be ahead of the curve. It did make me think, would South Dakota State go along? Will the Montana schools give it a serious look? Geographically, if you're talking about the Mountain West, which has been able, Hawaii being the outlier, of course, they've been able to stay within the Mountain West geographic footprint. Northern Illinois is, as a football-only member, mind you, not all the other sports, as is North Dakota State. They're the one that is the most out of the way. But if you're open to adding football-only members, because you don't have to deal with the added travel for all of the other sports, a lot of options are potentially on the table. And if you're Gloria Nevarez, commissioner of the Mountain West, and you're trying to figure out how do I build a league that is not just around for the next couple of seasons before it gets raided by somebody else, you're probably going to have to get to more than 10 schools. One day the Pac-12 probably will have to be at more than 8 schools. The question becomes, who are you going to go out and get? So for now, sitting at 10 for this year, maybe even for next year too, I think the Mountain West stands pat, says we're good. We're good. We've got enough. We've got a media rights deal. We've got a little extra money coming in because North Dakota State is paying us to join the league. I mean, you talk about following the SMU blueprint. Hey, we'll do anything, whatever it takes. 5 million fee, whatever. 12 minutes, sure. Sure, we just got to get there. They just had to get there. Do you think they're the only one? Probably not. There are a lot of schools at the lower levels of football that many of you probably don't pay as much attention to that fancy themselves as being able to compete at a higher level. There are FCS programs that have circled the wagons for a while, kicked the tires, tried to explore different avenues to make their way into the FBS because you can gain exposure there. And I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm not reporting anything. I'm just suggesting something that if I were Gloria Nevarez or in her position, that I would consider if you're just looking at football-only members and you've got your media rights partners and you've got to sell them not just inventory, but quality inventory, playoff caliber inventory. I would pick up the phone, I would call James Madison, and I'd say, what's your interest level? Yep, they're all the way in Virginia. It's a lot. They're very far outside of the footprint. And they've said several times in the past, they being the Mountain West, they want to keep things in a more traditional geographic region. The ACC is coast to coast. The Big Ten is coast to coast. The SEC's been able to stay in its footprint. Nobody else has. Everyone else has expanded. The Big 12 has a school in Florida. There's absolutely precedent for having a school that feels like it's way out of the way, that it doesn't make any sense. But you know what? UCF is a member of the Big 12. And Scott Frost had a solid year one. Maybe he'll push for a conference championship in year two. It wouldn't stun me. I'm not picking it to happen. I'm just saying it wouldn't shock me. After you lost all those programs, which if run correctly and maximized from a potential standpoint on the football field, all but Utah State have proven to me in the last several years or within the last decade or so, they can be a playoff caliber team at the group of five level. Fresno State, sure. Boise State, they've been. San Diego State, yes, absolutely. Colorado State's probably in the Utah State camp where I need to see it first. And they've got Jim Mora as their head coach now, of course. But I digress. If I were thinking of options, if I'm this willing to add whoever's available or whatever is out there, and I'm sure the Sun Belt agreement is ironclad, and notably no one's ever broken out of an agreement that they signed before in college sports. That's never happened. Never seen it. It would be the first time it's ever occurred. In the long run, though, it's a team I'd keep an eye on. Because as I mentioned yesterday on the show, if I'm ranking the top group of 6 leagues, right now, I've got the Mountain West ahead of the Sun Belt. I've got the Mountain West with North Dakota State, bolstering them a bit, solidly in third place. Do you think that's where Gloria Nevarez wants to keep it? Do you think she's just going to sit there at 10 teams and say, well, we don't need to do anything else? I seriously doubt it. So that'd be a home run move. It's also a fantasy move at this point in time. But you know what? I've seen way crazier things happen. So never say never. Maybe this is the Mike Tomlin time. Never say never, but never. It's probably a never. So what's the harm in picking up the phone? Not saying now. Not saying for the season. Keep an eye. See what happens. I'm sure JMU would love the chance to get a greater level of respect for being an undefeated conference champion. I'm just throwing it out there. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, however you want to get in touch. The Mountain West wasn't desperate. Somebody else is. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Mazda. This is Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who show there's more to the score than what's on screen. And I'm talking about the North Dakota State Bison. The Bison that are going to be a member of the FBS ranks after a 10-time national championship run at the FCS level. They have done everything right. And their drive reminds us of what it really takes to raise the bar. It's the extra work off the court, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, that grit, and that I never quit mentality. That is what North Dakota State and many more quality components has embodied for the last 2 decades as an FCS program. Now they will get to try it in the big time. Mazda puts that same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there is more to you. And this episode brought to you by our friends over at Wayfair. The new year's here. It's the perfect time to reset your routine and refresh your space. If you're spending more time at home, you might as well love how it looks and feels, right? That's why you should turn to Wayfair. It's a one-stop shop for getting your home back on track. From bedding and mattresses to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair makes it easy to start the year fresh. Wayfair has everything you need for a full home refresh, all in one place. Whether you're updating your living room, organizing your space, or upgrading your work from home setup, Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find exactly what works for your style and budget. You can pick up anything that you want for your space, whether it's a house, apartment, something in between. Wayfair's got you covered. Shopping is easy. Delivery is smooth. Everything arrives exactly as expected. You'll find your style without spending a fortune. Get organized, refreshed, and back on track this new year for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. One of the reasons I don't feel the Mountain West is on the cusp of making another move or actively exploring at this point in time another option to bring into their league is this move to bring in North Dakota State has no real downside. North Dakota State is paying you to be a part of the league. North Dakota State could come in and win the conference right away. Or maybe they come in and go 8-4. If they go anything over 500 because of the brand they've built up at the FCS level, the strength of your league is immediately bolstered. By how much, that likely depends on how much success they have. And we're still waiting to see what their schedule is actually going to look like. You better believe I'm going to talk about that on the show because I am more than a little fascinated in the Bison. So, what's interesting about this and why there's no downside is if North Dakota State comes in and doesn't succeed right away, it's easy for people to write off. Well, they're making an adjustment. There's a transition. And there would be a lot of truth to that if they were to come in and go 4-8 and miss a bowl game in year one. I don't think that's likely. They could maybe go 5-7, miss a bowl game, 6-6, lose a bowl game, 6-7, not do a lot. Easy to write it off. So there's no, from a perception standpoint for the Mountain West, there's no real downside, especially since they're paying you. This is a luxury addition for the Mountain West. It was, well, I mean, if you're going to pay up, sure. Why the heck not? The Mountain West wasn't desperate. North Dakota State felt more urgent than desperate. You know who's desperate? Sacramento State. So, we've been waiting for this domino to fall for a while. Sacramento State badly wants to get into an FBS conference. And this dynamic and reality for these two schools, Bison are in the Mountain West, Sacramento State is not. This applies. Anybody that works in college athletics out there knows exactly the sorts of things I'm talking about here. And plenty of you that don't also probably get it. But there are a lot of details and little minutia that if you work behind the scenes, you come to understand the importance of winning. Winning cures everything. Winning can make a lot of issues go away. Winning can be the difference between a coach that perhaps should be fired for one reason or another not getting fired. We've all seen those examples, right? So-and-so coach has some sort of issue off the field. Think about it like this. Kirby Smart has had more than a few public examples of off-field incidents with players driving cars recklessly. I'm not breaking any new news there. There hasn't been an incident, at least as I'm recording this show, at least not another new one. It has happened over and over and over. If Kirby Smart weren't winning at Georgia, it would add to the pressure for him and would continue to fuel discussions about whether he's going to stay in that particular job because, well, the results aren't good and you got this problem over here. But something like that isn't going to move Kirby Smart out of being Georgia's head football coach because the guy's won back-to-back SEC championships. Yeah, he's 0-2 in the playoff, but he's got 2 national titles. He's been to the SEC championship game 3 straight years. He's won it twice. He's won at least 12 games, 5 years in a row. I mean, you just get those sorts of benefits. So compare what Sacramento State has done, who's been a respectable FCS program, playoff appearances. They've made some good runs. But they haven't been anywhere close to a dynasty. They haven't won a national championship. The Bison have won a bunch of them. So that doesn't just bring money into your program so that you could, offer to pay the Mountain West. It brings the sort of reputation and attention, interest, and intrigue that would cause a league like the Mountain West to say, sure, we'll let you do it. Even if Sacramento State had the money, I don't think the Mountain West would have taken it. And I don't think they do, by the way. Not in the same way that North Dakota State does. Winning can just be this blanket to cover up anything and everything, and also, by the way, have effects that you can't always quantify. Winning all those national championships. When they won their 3rd in a row, they had a stretch where they won 8 of 9. They won 4 or 5 in a row at one point. When they won their 3rd in a row, and it was officially established as a dynasty in FCS college football and probably the greatest run of any program in FCS football history, at least that I'm aware of. After that 3rd straight title, how many folks, if any, maybe a few, said this is going to lay the foundation for us to play at a level of football that North Dakota State's never been to before? That's not what the concern was, but you never know. It's a positive externality. When you go out and win, money's important. Winning, probably even more important. I mean, you look at what UNLV has done over the last couple of years. The financial questions behind the scenes, and it seemed like when that was all coming out last year that it was a bit overblown and such. But what has winning done? Winning took UNLV just for a couple of years, not even a conference championship, just appearing in the game. That took them from an afterthought bottom dweller to the Pac-12 wanted to bring them into their league. Sacramento State badly wants to be an FBS program because they sense what North Dakota State senses. Hey, there's a chance here. There's a lot of chaos. Big changes coming. We just want to make sure we have a seat at the table because we feel like we can achieve even more than what we've done here. Now, the question that I think any conference would ask, and why North Dakota State is in the Mountain West and Sacramento State is not, is, hey, if you haven't won at a high level down there, why would we think you're going to win at a high level up here? I don't know that any of these schools, even a brand like North Dakota State, is bringing significant TV viewership and therefore revenue to the league. But again, the Bison can just pay and say, we'll pay to be here. We want to be here. Okay, well, sure. You want to give us an even number of teams and make the conference slate that much easier? Fine. That works out. The power of winning, you just never know. You just never know. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there. And if you win, You can be the hunter. If you don't, you can be the hunted. That's sometimes, not always, but when you're making these FCS to FBS jumps, that can be what it comes down to. Speaking of which, I owe an apology. I spoke hastily, was probably running on fumes from the Super Bowl victory of my beloved Seattle Seahawks, and said something yesterday on my show that was among the biggest oversights I've ever had. Just one of those things, make a remark, and then I realize, oh wait, but I don't realize it until the next day. I discussed the Owls of Kennesaw State very briefly and said, they haven't done anything. They just won Conference USA. It slipped my mind. I completely forgot. Straight up. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat this for you, Owls fans out there. I forgot. My bad. That's my bad. Kennesaw State, that was not an FCS power, made the jump. And in year one, bad. Absolutely terrible. They won 2 games under their long-time successful head coach, Brian Bohannon, who did have many a good years with Kennesaw State, but recently had fallen off considerably. And then Jerry Mack comes along in year one, boom, conference championship. And I forgot. That's shameful. That is shameful on my part. And let me assure one of the 3 Owls mascots out there in college sports, that will not happen again. Will not happen again. Maybe I should have discussed Kennesaw State as a potential one-day target for the Mountain West. Who knows? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter. However you want to get in touch. Back to the Power 2. Power 4. However you'd like to view. I prefer the term Power 4. I said Power 2. Didn't like how it sounded. So we're going to retract that a bit. Michigan schedule. Yikes. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online from the comfort of your own home, where I bring you this show. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. That is very important. You can upload your documents, go about your day, get updates right in the TurboTax app. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150. All in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. That's 18 days away from when this show airs. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today at TurboTax.com/local. So I've been on a schedule breakdown kick recently because each of these schedules for playoff caliber teams or playoff interested adjacent teams, they're worth breaking down. Talked about Iowa yesterday on the show. Tough. Jekyll and Hyde schedule there. Tough start, manageable finish. Penn State, very manageable. Incredibly workable. Northwestern ticked somebody off. The Northwestern schedule is insane. I got to tell you, Michigan's is right up there. So sometimes Wolverine fans don't like me very much. They think I don't like them, which is not true in the slightest, but they're going to continue to believe that in certain corners of the internet, and that's okay. I can live with it. I'll sleep at night. But last year, I picked Michigan to go 9-3. I got a lot of pushback from Michigan fans on that. They went 9-3, by the way. Just going to throw that one out there. And I said going into the year, no, this is the foundation year. Michigan's going to be better. They should start Bryce Underwood, and then they should push all their chips into the middle of the table for 2026. Now, I did say that at the time without having seen or glanced ahead at Michigan's 2026 schedule. If they go 9-3, I, of all people, might lobby actively for the Wolverines to make the playoff. They open with Western Michigan, no surprise. At least they're not playing that game in Germany, which was a consideration. People that run this sport are so weird and don't understand college football. Then the return trip by the Oklahoma Sooners. You know, a playoff team from last year with John Mateer back at quarterback for Brent Venables. Then they play UTEP. They still haven't left the cozy confines of the Big House. When Iowa comes to town next week, they're not a pushover. We'll see what they do at quarterback, but they are not a pushover. And then Michigan goes at Minnesota, which is always one of the sneakier tough games in the Big Ten. Should Michigan win? Of course. Of course they should. There's a world where Michigan's 5-0. Right now, I'll sit here and tell you, I'd probably pick them to go 5-0 in that stretch. Then they have a bye. And if you think that playing a good Iowa team at a respectable Minnesota team and Oklahoma in the first 5 weeks of the year was tough, you ain't seen nothing yet. Because Michigan has to play Penn State, Indiana. They keep getting all these games at home. That's the silver lining. At Rutgers, Michigan State. Oh boy, here we go, Jim. Their last 3 games: at Oregon, host UCLA, at Ohio State. There are schedules in the Big Ten that include none of Michigan. Not none. Let me backtrack. Second retraction of the show. Momentary retraction, though. There are schedules that have what we'll consider to be the top 4 teams in the Big Ten next year, leave 3 of them off. Michigan has to play Ohio State and Oregon on the road, in addition to the reigning national champion Indiana Hoosiers and Oklahoma, who is a playoff team. You have got 4 playoff teams on the schedule, 2 at home, 2 on the road, and Iowa and Penn State. I'll go back to what I said earlier. Yikes. This is a yikes. Kyle Whittingham is a great football coach. He's had a great transfer portal cycle. He's got a tremendously talented quarterback. He's been in a lot of big games in his career. He's won a lot of big games in his career. He wasn't able to get through BYU the last couple of years. Now, if you want to make the case Michigan's got more talent, that's perfectly fine. There's more talent on the teams he's going up against here. This is such a rude introduction to being in Ann Arbor. This is the most no-brainer 10-2 gets you in the playoff that I have seen in college football. Ohio State's schedule also up there. If Northwestern went 10-2, they deserve to be in the playoff. My everydayers out there have heard me for years rail against the possibility that I unfortunately think will happen in college football one day of a 3-loss team getting into the college football playoff. I think it goes against what has made the sport great for a very long time, which is the week-to-week urgency in the regular season. If Michigan goes 9-3 with that schedule, you realize they could lose to Indiana, at Oregon, at Ohio State, and they still will have beaten a playoff team, a top 20 finisher, and Penn State with Matt Campbell. Yeah. I'm going to consider it. I'll just tell you, I'm considering that. That schedule gives me reason to go, okay, you at 9-3, I'll give you a look. Texas last year lost to Florida? No. Florida last year with their schedule, if they had? Yeah. Would have given them a look before the season. This is on paper. Maybe Indiana, Oregon, and Ohio State will fall off the face of the earth. I have my doubts. So Kyle Whittingham, I wish you the best of luck, sir. It will not be very simple. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.